I wanted to ask you about 2016, and specifically whether you might consider making a run for the presidency yourself in 2016. You know, all these Republicans, the real problem is not only that they talk a big game when it comes to cutting government and limited government and that sort of thing, and then when they get elected, they, of course, they never follow through on it. I think an even more serious problem is that they don't even make the case well. When they're on TV, when they're in debates, they don't even try to make a good case for free market capitalism and the Constitution and individual liberty. They just always cave to the left or, modify what they believe. It seems like now, like every day you turn on the TV now, you hear some Republican arguing that we should raise the minimum wage, And I think it'd be really valuable to have someone like you who's really going to go all the way and give, a full-throated defense of capitalism.
Yeah, well, the problem is, even if I were to run for president, I would most likely be running in silence. I would get very little coverage. So even though I would be talking about capitalism and I would say, hey, let's get rid of the minimum wage, it's not like I would be covered by the media. It's not like I would be invited to participate in the debates. Look, Gary Johnson barely got any coverage when he ran. He was excluded from almost all the debates, and he was a former two-time governor. He had a lot of support. Right. He was a real credible candidate, and he couldn't even get much coverage. I mean, Ron Paul barely got coverage, even though he was very popular and was a congressman. So who am I? I mean, in the political world, I'm nobody. I mean, I ran once unsuccessfully for the Republican nomination for Senate. That's my resume. So I would be, nobody would consider me. In fact, there are plenty of people who run for president every year. I mean, every 4 years, who you've never heard of. They don't get any coverage. They're out there. They announce their candidacy and they campaign in obscurity. And so that would most likely be what I would be doing. I mean, sometimes you get a guy like a Herman Cain who comes from out of nowhere, and But, a lot of that had to do with the fact, I think, that he happened to be black. I mean, it was like, I think the Republicans really like, hey, look, we got a black candidate. So they might, but I think if Herman Cain were white, they probably wouldn't have covered him. He wouldn't have gotten, but he got a lot of coverage, I think, maybe because he was the black Republican, and it kind of, maybe I'm a Jewish Republican, but I don't think that's enough to make it a big enough novelty that they would want to include me. And maybe they were afraid if they excluded Herman Cain that they would have appeared racist. So why don't you include Herman Cain? Is it because he's black? So, because I think that, prior to the debates, I think there was probably more support for Gary Johnson than Herman Cain. But, there were plenty of people who were running who didn't get, invited or covered. And I would think that would be the same thing for me. So, it's not something that I'm planning on. I mean, the only reason I would do it, the odds of me winning, right? I'd have to be kind of delusional to think that I could win. So the only reason to do it would be if I thought it was just publicity. I mean, look at Herman Cain certainly, went from obscurity. Then he got a radio show. He sold books. So he was able to elevate his stature and maybe capitalize on that. But, I know, like, from experience, when I ran for Senate, I actually got less media attention than before I was a candidate. And it's expensive and it's time consuming. So for me, I have so many other things that I can do, both to generate income for myself and to spread my message, get the word out, that I don't necessarily need a campaign to do it. I don't have to run for office. I have this radio show. I can write. I have books. There are things that I can do to talk about this stuff. I don't have to, do it on a campaign trail and hope that somebody covers me because I am a presidential candidate. And plus, you've got Rand Paul, who is, very likely to run. Will run. And I would much rather see people voting for Rand than voting for me because Rand has a chance, so I wouldn't want to take votes away from him. Not that I would take that many, but you never know. I mean, I could take a few. I just assume Rand get all the votes that would have gone to me. Because he has a credible chance of actually winning. So it's not something I'm thinking about doing. But if you think about, would I run for office, would I run for president at some future unknown date, it could happen. I mean, if things work out in the U.S. economy the way I think, if the disaster is every bit as big as I believe it's going to be, and if a lot of the rest of my forecasts are vindicated, validated, and the country is in bad enough shape, and more people begin to recognize, hey, this guy Schiff was right. Look at the things that he was saying. Maybe he knows something. Maybe that's what we need is a guy like that. That might be an environment in which my candidacy might take hold. And, of course, if all the things that I forecast are right, I'll have enough money to finance that campaign. I mean, I don't have enough money to finance it now. I mean, I would probably have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars of my own money to run for president. I don't have a spare few hundred million. But if all of the things that I think are going to happen, I will. And so I might decide to take some of my money and spend it on a presidential campaign. And hopefully I'd have more people who would want to support me, too, at that point. So I wouldn't have to finance the whole thing. But I'm sure I'd have to spend a lot of money. And I'm not in a position to do it now. I want my money doing other things, not spent on a campaign. And nor do I even want to ask other people to make contributions that would be better given to other people or invested in gold and silver for now rather than sent to me to waste my time running a no-win election. But yeah, a lot of people ask me. I had the fundraiser here last night for Dave Walker, and people will say, "Hey, what are you thinking about running?" And I'm really not. I mean, I did it that one time. And, I've had time to think about it, and I'm doing so many other things. Got so many other businesses going, so much on my plate that, you have to clear your plate in order to run for office. And I actually, it's tough. Now, this summer, I get to enjoy the summer. I get to enjoy my family. I remember that one summer, it was rough when I ran for office. You don't get to enjoy the summer because the summer is really the campaign because you vote in the fall. So you got to spend the whole summer, dressed in a jacket and a tie. Sometimes it's hot. You're going from one function to another, and you're missing out on, the things that you love to do in the summer. So, there's a lot of sacrifice that you make. It's not easy. And then you don't even win. So it ends up being a waste. But I appreciate the fact that so many people support me and want me to run. And so maybe one day I will. But I don't have any plans to run in 2016 for anything. I'm not even running for dog catcher.